Sorry. Can you guys hear me?
Yes.
All right. So before I run this function, let me also fix it. So we can put our parameters here. Say num1, can call num1, comma num2. Remember we said in this one we said okay, subtract. Let's say subtract two numbers. Subtract two numbers. So now we do num1 minus num2, right? And then here we can call, say, 200, comma 67, and then we say so can you guys hear me? Please, let's try to stay muted so that we don't distract the class. Okay, so I'm calling the function subtract again. So you can say 80, comma say 12, and then you can say subtract two numbers, maybe 2, comma 6. So yeah, if this is testing, you might say, okay, these are different test cases, or these are different test data that you want to use to test these functions to be sure that they can actually perform irrespective, or yeah, they can perform the action that they are expected to perform irrespective of the value that were given to them. Alfred, are you saying something? Okay. Irrespective of, please, what's going on? Okay, so these are cases that, I mean, you can keep giving different values just to be sure that your function is returning the accurate results, irrespective of the values that you are giving to it, right? And with that, you can be sure that your function is performing well, right? Basically, your unit test will look something like this, because you're going to be calling the function inside your unit test file and then be, giving it, and then, I mean, you're going to write a test function and then call this same function here and then give it different values and expect it to return a certain result that you expect, right? So that's basically what your unit test will look like. So let's run this code and see what it returns. So I'm going to run this, and yeah. So sorry, let me do something so that we can differentiate between the two functions. So let's say console.log. Exactly, this is what I need. Okay, so let me clear this and run this again. Yeah, so now what you see above here is this multiplication of three numbers. So this first scenario or the first values gave us 48. I don't know if anybody tried to do it on their calculator. Then the second call, function call with these values gave us -0. The third one gave us 200,000. And then the last one gave us 0.75 till 100. So yeah, so this is the result of these different values. So you can see that this one single function with just this one line of code here, we are able to perform multiplications of several numbers, and the list can continue depending on how you want to do it, right? Now, for the subtract function, subtract two numbers function, we also have these three scenarios or these three different values, and we have the result here, right? So the first one is 133, second one 68, and then the last one is 4. So -4, sorry. So you can see how you can basically create a function and be able to reuse them, right? And not just reusing functions, not just inside of this file where you created them. There's a possibility for you, it's not there's a possibility, like you will even come across when you start writing tests, and when you write tests, you have to make your tests, you can't just be hard coding things within your test. If not, you're going to be writing flaky tests and so many other things. So it's important that in some cases where need be, you create functions. And these functions, you can decide to have them in a separate file. Maybe call them helper functions, and then create a separate folder or a separate folder or file for them inside your repository. So your helper functions can actually be in a folder where your test folder is not, right? So how do you do it? You have to call those functions inside of your test by importing them. So when you call them, they will still give you the result of what they are expected to do, why you created them in the first place. So yeah, any questions so far before we proceed? So this is one way to basically do this. Then there is also another way of creating a parameter or passing a parameter in your function, right? And that's by creating default parameters. So like in this case, we created these variables and we didn't give them any value, right? So at this point, whichever value we pass to it is what they will pick and become. So, but you can be creating a function and then you create a parameter that you want to have a specific value already, even from the very time where you are creating it. You want it to have a particular value, or you want a particular value, you want to give it a particular value as you are creating the parameter, just like you creating a variable and assigning it a value. All right. So you can create a function like that. So let's create one function, say function, maybe function greet people, or function say hello. Yeah. And then we want it to say hello to people. So we want to give a parameter of people's name. So I can say people's name. And then now, because I already have a value, I want this function the first time, I want it to automatically tell James, hello, right? So I already have a name I have in mind. So you can just, inside of this bracket, say equal to, and then give it a value, right? Maybe James. I don't know if we have James here. Okay, so maybe James, yeah. So what you've done is that you've declared a variable, like you've created a parameter here, which is like a variable, and then you've already assigned it a value from the moment of declaration or from the moment of passing the parameter here inside the function. So now I can now say console.log. I can now say console.log hello um hello James. Yeah. Um this is another way to concatenate a string in JavaScript. I think what I've been using before is something like this, hello, and then I put a plus or comma, and then put the variable. Yeah, you can do this, it works the same way. You can also remove the comma and use a plus. It will do the same thing. And then you can also use your literal, string literal, call the hello, and then do your, what's it called? There's a word for it. Yeah, okay. Yeah, you can also do this basically. If I remember the name because of this thing, I'll let you know. Yeah, so you can do this and it will still return the same result. So these are different ways you can actually concatenate a string with a variable in JavaScript. So now at this point, if I call this function, say hello, right? If I call it, it's going to greet James. It's going to say hello, James. So I can put exclamation mark at the end. I want it to be very loud. So if I run this function, I let me comment this out. Comment this out. So yeah, it says hello, James. Yeah, hello, James. So, but this does not also mean that I cannot change this value here, right? I can actually decide to call the function again and reassign this name a value. So I'll just basically pass the new value I want to reassign, right? So let me just use Esther. Copilot suggested Esther for me. So let me use Esther. Esther, sorry. So now I can call, if I call this function again, I'm going to get hello James and hello Esther. So if I run this, see that I get hello James and I get hello Esther. That's because I have in this second call, I reassigned this name variable or name parameter. I gave it another value by passing another argument to this function. I don't know if that makes sense. Does that make sense?
No, it doesn't.
Okay, so what's your confusion?
The second one, because I'm seeing that Jane Esther is not part of the name that was defined, but then it's actually returning Esther. Can you please explain that part again?
Okay, so let me take out James for now. Let me cut it out, right? So do you understand this now? The way the function is now, do you understand it?
Yes, I do.
Okay. So the function now, if I run it, it will return, for this one, it will say hello Esther, right? And it's correct, Abby?
Yes.
Okay. Now, I think if I run this one, this should be undefined. Yes. Oh, yeah, hello undefined, yes. That's because I didn't give any value for now, right? But initially, when I when I put James here, so what I have done or what's happened here is that, remember when we create variables, say let let name equal to Esther, right? Let me use the same thing, for example. I can come here and still say name equal to Mary, and the value of name here will change. Do you understand that part?
Yes, I do.
Okay. So this thing that happened here is actually what is happening inside of this function. So when I declared or when I created this function, okay, sorry, let me leave that. When I created this function and gave a parameter name and assigned it to James, it's equivalent to what I did here in the first line. Do you understand? Now, when I called this function the second time here and I gave it Esther, it's equivalent to what I did here. What I did is that I changed the value of name to Esther. Does that make sense?
Okay. Yes, it does.
Do you understand now?
Yes.
Okay,
Thank you.
you're welcome. Any other person that have any concern or question? All right. So, mm, yeah, so when I ran this before, it's printed undefined and Esther. Yes, that's because I didn't pass any argument here and there was no argument assigned initially. So, but if I run this now, it should return this now. Shouldn't have any problem. So yeah, so this is another way of creating a parameter or for your function and then receiving arguments, yeah, for your function. Let me comment out these console logs. So the next thing is function invocation. We are already doing that. So that is these things that you see us here doing, calling this function. What we are basically doing is invoking the function. If I don't invoke the function, it will not do anything. It will be processed, but you're not going to see the result. It won't do anything actually. It's just like the function likes minding their business, basically. So if you create a function and you don't call it, it will not answer you. It's just like we human beings. If somebody does not call your name, will you just go and answer, hey, are you calling me? No, you won't do that, right? You will only answer when you are called. So that's basically what happens with function. And that's the same thing. It's just like you saying, so when somebody says function call, it still means function invocation. So it still means you invoking the function, calling the function, right? So that's what we've been doing here all this while. So even if I do console.log here and I don't call this function, it will not print the name for me. It will be there and be looking at me, right? If I run it, I will not get anything. That's because I did not call it. Oga will not answer when you do not call it or when you do not invoke it, right? So that's basically function invocation and function call. And there are actually some ways to call functions or several ways to call a function or to invoke a function. And I've pointed out 3 points here. So you can actually call a function when an event occurs or when you want an event to happen. And like I gave an example when I was explaining functions, I talked about like login button. When you click a login button, a an action occurs, right? What do you think is doing that? Something is actually doing that thing. A function is being called basically when you click a button or click a link and it goes to another link. A particular function is making sure that that thing is happening, right? It's making sure that when you click a button, you can log in, or when you click a button after you've met these conditions you've met conditions like maybe putting in your username and password. And when you now click a particular button, or the login button, or submit button, or sign in button, depending on whatever name they give it. So that button you are seeing there is not what is actually doing it. It is the JavaScript function that has been provided in the JavaScript file that basically triggers that action and makes it happen, makes the event happen, right? So that's one way to actually call a function. So you can basically write a function and then say, upon click, then do this, right? So when so it will what the function would actually just be waiting for a click event to happen. If you say, depending on the kind of event, basically, depending on the event that you want to trigger that function. So not just by calling a function here, we are doing this here because we are basically doing some of these things. But you can write a JavaScript function, a simple function, and say, okay, oh, when I go, maybe on your HTML file, you say, okay, um, when you click a button, change the color to red, or change the color to blue. Or when I click this function, start dancing. Or when I click this button, sorry, do this, right? So the function will basically be listening for an event, depending on the event that you tell it. If the event is a click event, it will be listening for a click event. So that click event is now what is calling the function. So when you click, it will call the function, and the function triggers and does what it wants to do. So that's one way. Another way is maybe when it is invoked from a JavaScript code. And that's what I was explaining. So this one is one way, invoking it in a JavaScript file, in a JavaScript code like this. So this is what we are doing here. Another way is by calling it in another file. So maybe in this index.js, you import it and call this function, and call the function that is inside this file, right? Call maybe multiplication or something inside of index.js, which is in another folder, right? And it will still do the same thing inside of that folder. That is if you need it there, right? So that's also another way to invoke a function within your JavaScript code. So another way to actually call your function is when it calls itself, or it invokes itself, and we usually call it self-invoked or immediately invoked functions, right? So how does that work, or what does it look like? You can see here that I put like an example um example function that is calling itself immediately. So it is an immediately invoked function. So we can so you can see that the function is inside a bracket, sort of. And then it's also, I mean, has almost the same similar characteristics of the other functions that we've been creating all this while. So let's see this function and see what it looks like in code. So I can create a function. First of all, I started with this, and then I call the function keyword. Yeah. And then I say maybe our James scenario. Okay, I would have even changed this to that. Okay, let's say name, and then inside here we are saying, or maybe some or anything, basically. So then inside here we are saying console dot log. Oh, sorry, am I supposed to put some? So let's say num1, num2. So let's say this function is trying to sum up two numbers. So please console log num1 plus num2. What am I doing? So let's say num1 plus num2. And then we have yeah. So we now pass in two numbers basically to that function. So we can say 4, 7. So it will basically give us the sum of these numbers. So this is another way. This is a function, right? And in this case, we don't need to call it, right? So if I run this code, this function should actually give me the sum of these two numbers, even without me calling it anyway, right? Where is say hello is not a function. Sorry. Okay. Anyway. So yeah, it's saying okay, function name. So let's say sum, for instance. And then yeah, I put console. Did I put any console log anywhere? Okay. So let's run this again. Say hello is not a. Why are you calling say hello? Okay, let's comment this out. Let's comment all of them out. Let's see what is going on. Objects anonymous function 37, 34, and 34. Okay. So now it's saying console.log is not a function. What? 31. Okay. So what's the problem here? Function. This. Yeah. Okay.
Hello, I think your console log is supposed to be some inside, not, if I'm not mistaken. I don't know.
Inside.
Inside the console log, based on what you have previously.
No, no, no. No, shouldn't. Sorry, you said?
I, I feel some should be with that bracket 4, 7.
Some here. No, no, no. So we are doing a self-invoked function, right? So we shouldn't be calling it here. I don't know if you understand what I said.
It should be beside the console log,
You mean here? No.
inside.
So normally this console log should print out this plus this. It has nothing to do with the console log. The problem is with the way the function is. So um let me check if I'm making a mistake anyway. Function. Mhm. And then this close. Yeah, so this should work. What's the problem? Okay. A semicolon does not change anything. Okay, so yeah, the problem is that I gave it a name here. Okay, so the problem was the name I put here. So yeah, we can see the sum of the two numbers, basically. The sum of those two numbers here. And from here, you can still change to maybe 10 or 65 or anything. And when you run it, it gives you the same sum. So now you can see that we are not calling this. So the function is automatically calling itself by itself, right? So it's automatically invoking itself and returning the result of this of the function. Do you understand? Okay, so yeah, so that's what I was trying to demonstrate, a situation whereby a function is calling itself or invoking itself. You don't need to like start calling it here or even giving it a name. Actually, the mistake I made was giving it a name, right? You don't even need to give the function a name. So we just create the function and it automatically like it calls itself by itself. So yeah. Oh, jeez. What did I do now? Command Y. Okay.
Okay, so
So yeah.
irrespective of what we have, whether subtraction, multiplication, and all, it's going to give us, right?
So what is controlling whether it is subtraction or addition or whatever is the code that you have put within the function. Do you understand?
Okay,
And
okay,
that code, in my own case, initially what I had was this.
yeah,
Yeah, console log n plus num 1 plus num 2. So automatically this function is doing sum. It's returning
yes,
two numbers. Do you understand? If I change
yes,
it to minus, it will start returning sum of subtraction of two numbers. Do you understand?
mm,
So what is actually defining the attitude that should happen in the code? Is it the attitude now? Be the action? Don't mind me. Is the logic that you have put inside of the function. Does
okay,
that make sense? So if
okay,
I put here, if I change this to say hello, it's no longer returning any say hello. It will no longer return any this thing. So it means this would even be obsolete. There won't be any need for these things. And if I run this, it's going to just print say hello. Do you understand? So what is determining what the function will do is the logic that you have put in the function inside this curly brace. What you have defined within this curly brace is what determines what the function will do. I hope I answered your question. Uh,
yes. Thank you.
you're welcome. Okay, so the next thing we have is okay, so I have arrow functions and callback functions. Yeah. Um, so what are arrow functions basically? So arrow functions is like a short way of writing functions. And this was basically introduced with the EXIS engine, right? Um, so you can still do your function or create your function and have them do what they need to do or what you want them to do by writing just a simple line that looks like this, right? And to still do the same thing. So I'm just going to rewrite one of these functions that we have up here in a using an arrow function. So let's say, let me comment this. So let's say this function, the one that is telling us hello, I want to rewrite it, right, as an arrow function. So what I'm going to do is first I'm going to create a variable, say hello, yeah. And then I'm going to create a function. So this time I'm not going to give it the function keyword. when you're creating a function using an arrow, using arrow function, you don't need the function keyword, right? All you just need to do is open your brace. So let me just write it up here before I might convert. So I can say const fun. So I'll just open my open brace and then put your fat arrow key and then open your distance. So this is basically a function. This is a function, right? Now you can decide to even remove this and then tell it to do something. Say maybe console.log hello. Yeah. If I comment this out and I call, if I say fun and I run this code, it's going to print hello for us, right? So this is a function and I can tell it print 2 plus 2, result of 2 plus 2. And if I run it, it's going to give us 4. Sorry, I mistakenly pressed something. So if I run it, it's going to give us 4. So it's as simple as it looks. This is a function, right? And the function can have parameters too. I can say num1, num2, and I can use them inside my thing, num1 plus num2, sorry, plus num2. And if I call the function and give it any number I like, it will return the sum of those numbers for me, right? So just in one line, I have succeeded in doing the same thing that we did here, right? This, no, not this subtraction, this addition, no, this one is multiplication. Oh, okay, basically something similar to this, right? I can, let me just change it to multiplication so that it will become what we did here. And if I want it to be exactly what we did up there, I just need to add one more variable, say 3, and then I'll do num3. Yeah, num3, right? And then I just need to add one more number here. One more number. And it will still do the same thing that this function up here is doing. They are basically the same thing. It's just that I just declared an arrow function. And they will give me the same results. Oh my God. I hope all is well, Sean. All right, so yeah, so the call will end again. So let's try and join in.
Hello, Mary.
Do you have a question?
Yeah, please, what function did you press to get that arrow?
So you just, this function is 2 different elements on your keyboard, with 2 different keys. So the first one is the equal to sign. Like if you want
Okay,
to
the
write
equal
that function,
sign.
you put your equal to, and then you put your less than, greater than, yes, that's how to,
Oh, okay.
yeah. So it's 2, combination of 2 arguments, but JavaScript recognizes it as a function. As you can see, when I hover on it,
So press it at the same time.
sorry?
You press it at the same time.